Everybody, thanks for jumping on Wealth Protector TV. I'm Paul Hitchcock, and I'm here with Alexandra Alvarado. And we've got a great alliance going. I'm with Barth Calderon. You can see up in the corner there, we're an asset protection, estate planning, business planning firm. We have a lot of rental income property owners as clients. Do some speaking for AAOA. Alexandra is the Director of Education for the American Apartment Owners Association. And that's a mouthful, by the way. I always worry I'm going to stumble through that. But this is sort of an end of the year, couple hot button issues to think about. Alexandra is going to mention some issues with HUD that are going on to be aware of. Just get thinking about this. I'm going to mention some end of the year planning guidelines that we are talking about with property owner clients. So, Alexandra, you want to jump in? What should we be know about with HUD?
Yeah, so starting in September, we actually saw HUD remove a lot of the guidance that they had around fair housing for landlords. And this affects not just, certain landlords, really all landlords are almost all landlords are going to be covered under what they've removed. But because they removed it, it doesn't necessarily mean there aren't laws to follow. They are saying now that they're working on new guidance and they're just taking down the old guidance in the meantime, which sort of leaves landlords feeling a little bit sort of in limbo here. The law is
Which they
still the
hate, which
law.
they hate, right?
Right. The law is still the law. So at least we
Yeah.
can count on that, right? The guidance though that the US Department of Housing and Urban Development had provided was almost treated as law for a long time. That guidance was really what we would go off of. It's like here's the law and here's how to follow the law, and HUD is telling us how to follow it. Now there's nothing.
Hmm.
So, in the meantime, we're recommending just still following the old guidelines, even though they're not even up on their website anymore.
Oh,
Yeah, they did remove it, and they're even with the government shutdown, ending, they're still not up there. But just because HUD doesn't support or endorse those guidance documents, and we have less clarity, especially on when it comes to fair housing, which is you think about fair housing in the terms of leasing. And
right.
it's really going to be mostly in the tenant screening process. So, interviewing tenants, what you say to them, how you deny or approve them for the rental unit. And then obviously, that's going to be really the bulk of it. So it's really making it a little difficult in that screening process here. It is a bit of, uncertainty right now.
Right.
And on top of that, HUD also has stated that they are, quote, deprioritizing enforcement.
What does that
So
mean?
that means that if you don't follow guidance, right, or if you don't follow the law, that they will be less likely to uh, challenge you. They will be
Ah,
less, they are taking on fewer cases that are brought on by tenants against landlords. But of course, this doesn't guarantee you immunity from a fair
yep.
housing challenge. They could still do it, but although they're not prioritizing it, it's still possible. However, what's actually happening now because of that is a lot of tenants are moving through either private litigation to
Oh,
litigate these fair housing issues privately because they don't think HUD has the bandwidth, which they've stated that they don't, to really investigate these cases. And you also have state and local fair housing assistance programs and agencies, though they're handling the bulk of complaints as well,
oh,
and
okay.
nonprofit advocacy organizations. So now a tenant who may have normally gone through HUD to file a fair housing complaint, which was easy and free, but also not so, I think, aggressive towards landlords. If they go the private route, it certainly becomes more potentially a bigger lawsuit for landlords. Those kind of lawsuits, I mean, you're really looking at a more costly legal defense if
Right.
it's private. Not to mention, that potential for large settlements or disputes or cases that go on for a long time, unfortunately hurting your reputation in the process.
Yeah. And Alexander, how do you keep your members in the know on this? Is there
Mhm.
stuff on the website or what's the best way for
Yeah.
them? Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you go to our website, aaoa.com, first I would recommend that you create a free account with us. That's going to allow you to get the newsletter. So the newsletter, basically, we send it out every Tuesday and Friday. That's going to have updates on all of this type of stuff. Plus, we'll send you invites to our free webinars on these topics. You can view recordings on the topics that we've covered. And if you don't want to do any of that, you can still go to our site and click on education in the menu and click on news, and you'll see our full blog with all of the newest, latest articles that we have been posting in our e-newsletter. So it is nice to get the newsletter because it'll show you like, okay, what's happening this week, right? That you
Right.
should be
Right.
aware of. So yeah, definitely go there and take a look. I mean, this is going to be interesting because I think once we start getting more guidelines from the administration, we'll have something to talk about. But for now, this really, I mean, it's just really been so, I think, ingrained in fair housing. Like you follow HUD's guidelines. That's what we do. And now that they're gone, I think I just want to make sure nobody has any sort of false positive, I hate to say
Right.
it, outlook
Right.
on it because it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a good thing. It
Yeah.
does mean that you're still very liable for what you're doing. You just might get sued through a different method.
Yeah, and never fun. Those attorneys
Yeah.
are attack dogs. And yeah, I mean, I get your newsletter. It's awesome. I encourage everybody that might see this to, for sure, get in there. It's free. It's very good stuff. Awesome updates. I want to fly through a couple things on my end here real quick. And you and I were talking beforehand. So we're sending out a big blog tomorrow. Every Tuesday, our blog goes out, and get a lot of questions from clients, a lot of property owners. What should I be thinking about year end? Couple highlights here is one is review your living trust, your will, powers of attorney. Big life changes equal mandatory updates. And the things that we look for that are going to be sort of a lightning rod for changing your planning are marriage, divorce, remarriage, new children or grandchildren, child turning 18, death or incapacity of a family member, someone named in your documents moving away out of the area, in your estate planning documents, significant asset changes, buying a property, selling a property, putting somebody else on the title of a property. These are all really big deals with your planning. And then a business purchase or sale, not only property, but a business. And then some of the most common issues we see, old trustees, old beneficiaries, and outdated instructions. And when we see that and life throws you a curveball, so many times we see rental property owners where the property goes into probate, or there's nobody named there to handle affairs with the property, and so the government steps in and starts doing stuff which nobody wants. So that's a big area. Make sure your assets are actually in your trust. This happens a lot, Alexander, with property where property owners are doing exchanges, or something's going on with the property. They're buying or selling a property, it's shifting around, and even though they may have a living trust, they forget to retitle the property in the name of the trust, which means if you do that, even though you have a living trust, if it's not titled in the trust, probate, or something happens, it's not in your trust. So um, check for that. Homes being refinanced and taken out of the trust for some reason to do a refinance. Uh, Out of the trust problem. Rental properties bought in the owner's name instead of an LLC problem. So do that. Another big area. Three is confirm and update all beneficiary designations. This is a big deal. We see a lot of ex-spouses still listed, deceased parents, minor children named directly in on assets as beneficiaries, major legal problem, no contingent beneficiaries, and outdated percentages, ownership percentages. Again, when we see property shifting around, this happens quite a bit. They're bringing owners on, or they're adding a certain percentage for a child because they're trying to bring the child into ownership for a lot of different reasons of a property, and it's not accounted for in the documents. And then LLC housekeeping, that is a big deal for property owners, is there's no operating agreement with your LLC for the property. That's a problem because what happens is that if you don't have your own operating agreement, then it defaults to the one supplied by the state that you live in, and those are typically crappy. They're just off-the-shelf operating agreements, and if something happens to you or somebody's looking at your operating agreement, like you're getting sued, they will always look at your operating agreement and they'll say, look at it, and they will want to see if you're doing exactly what it says in the operating agreement. And if you're not, that LLC is going to fall apart. So that's a big deal. Or an outdated operating agreement, properties titled incorrectly, commingling between personal and business accounts. So we do an end of the year review for property owners that looks at this. Now, are you keeping those assets separate? Because if you're commingling business and personal, then you're going to be open for the LLC being punctured. It's not going to work. They're going to find fault with it. And then old managers or members listed within your LLC. And okay, so those are our big issues we're talking about in the blog tomorrow. And I think it's just a good reminder of your end and my end. If you're owning property, having a review with the appropriate professionals that are in your circle there, very good idea.
And I'll add one more to your list, Paul.
Yes, please.
So check your E&O insurance and
Oh,
ask if they cover fair housing defense.
oh,
Since we are seeing an uptick in fair housing lawsuits, you don't want to find out that those types are not covered. If they're not covered, they may be able to offer you something separate for the fair housing and discrimination coverage that will protect against if you did get a HUD complaint or any other sort of, claims of fair housing. And hopefully that would cover any settlement costs and legal fees. So definitely verify. I think it's, again, end of year, right? That's always a good time to see, like, what does my insurance actually cover? And is this something that, I should probably do just in case? Because we are definitely seeing that uptick. And I think it's not going to necessarily go down just because HUD stated that they're not enforcing. Like I said, other avenues, other routes are still at risk and more likely so. So definitely be prepared for that.
great call on the insurance.
Mhm.
Good stuff, Alexander. Always appreciate you being here. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right.